So that's a shout out to Ivor right there. God, that was so intense for me, like on an emotional level. It's like some artists reach you like that, you know what I'm saying? Because on a spiritual level, they are holding true love's flame and, you know, traditional, whatever. And she's very traditional. I really enjoyed that. That was amazing. That's why I made a special video just for her, because I think she's that supreme. I do. You know what I mean? That was way cool. She's like, I'm sending out my love to everybody. I'm like, yeah. You know what I mean? So to me, she's definitely a representative of, say, like a vulva archetype, you know, definitely. So now she's going through an adjustment where all of a sudden you're not playing with your big band anymore. You know, everybody's kind of gone home, travel's shut down internationally. So you see more and more artists online, right? And I think, you know, that's kind of the trend. It seems like kind of like a big push worldwide to just everything going online, right? I don't know. We'll see how far this pandemic situation goes, but you know, could it potentially turn into something big? Yeah, well, maybe. But I could end up with a major earthquake where I am, you know what I'm saying? So I just keep that in mind. So I was sitting back here when that big earthquake hit, you know, shook the ground. And I didn't freak out or anything, but I definitely was like, whoa. And then I'm like, at the beginning of this year, I said, okay, this is going to be a big year. We're going to see some big things. But no, you know, ended up being a lot bigger, right, than I thought initially. So now the vibe is like, has to stay positive. That's what I've decided, you know. And having emotional vents are really important. Like her voice, because of her folk soul and her heart's flame, is so powerful to me. Like, how can I describe that on a deep level? It made me cry. That's how powerful her voice is. And you go, really? A woman's voice has that impact on you? Yeah, yes, it does. Like, whoa, that's the most beautiful sound to me in the world is a woman's voice, especially a folk artist. You know, men too, but I'm a man, so I have a different perspective. Maybe women might look at that differently, you know what I mean? Maybe there's an opposite side of the coin where um, a man's voice might move a woman like that, you know what I'm saying? But I would oftentimes like discount myself, you know, and say, well, look at this person, I'm not as good as them or whatever it is, you know. But I feel like if I'm coming from a place that is more positive, that's the important aspect, especially now. I'm so close to the mic, I have to be careful not to hit it too hard. She's so used to like doing, you know, open air venues. I've seen a lot of her performances, and she's way powerful. She is so powerful vocally that, you know, like those old school amphitheaters, she could probably project and be heard clearly in the back without a mic. You go, really? Really? Because in the old school days, that would have been how things were done, or you would have used, say, natural echo of an environment, maybe canyon or cave, something like that. I saw that performance with Aurora and Wardruna, and then they had like a whole bunch of choral singers. That was cool. Very powerful, very tribal, very old school. And so as I look at it, that this may be a big opportunity for folk artists and independent artists to rise, because now it's not about a big band and having a giant crowd in front of you. It's now about the individual, or small groups of players, like her and her husband. Her husband accompanied her with piano. I thought that was way cool. That's the kind of relationship I would like to have. You know what I'm saying? Where the two people complement each other, and no divorces, no conflict, no bullshit. You know what I'm saying? It's a much happier way to live. But when you live good traditional values, it's more likely that your relationships will be healthier in general. And I think that is key and paramount at this time. And just, addressing certain issues is important, but I'm just going to say stick with folk culture, and, that's where I'm going with my energy. Still do reading and, educational stuff, because I enjoy that. But music is the center, right? Deep down, deep down, we feel trouble heart. Deep down, trouble heart. Deep down. Still feeling like the emotions and the impact of listening to her play. Like, it's hard to explain to people how deep music affects me sometimes. It's like, I noticed a long time ago that people didn't feel music, that some people do, you know what I mean? But I've just really internalize it, helps to release emotional pain, you know. It's important. But I can tell, I've gotten more sensitive to artists who sing from the heart versus just get up there and perform and whatever because you don't feel it. See? That's why you need that folk element that is a personal connection to the music. And isn't that better than just some giant untouchable rock star that you would never even be able to meet in person because there are just too many people? Yes, feels awesome. Hopefully it sounds good where you are. This is, wow. That was cool. That was so awesome. Wow. Pulled out the Patriot Ovation, It's been sitting in the case for a while, so I don't know. I didn't tune it in. I was just like, all right. I was a little tired today. Had a storm, a couple, some snow, some late March snow. What am I attracted to play? Well, started looking around and have guitars stacked against the wall. Like, wow. Started out with one guitar. Your voice deep down in my heart and soul. Release down, deep down pain. True love, flame tree and well says, welcome down to the pond, sitting in the rocking chair. Down by the old oak tree. Heard a song so beautiful, made my eyes water and streams down my cheeks. Whoa, rough as I am, I can try. She sings like a bird. Rough as I am, I know. Yeah. Singing like a songbird, singing like a songbird. Beautiful, like a dream. Be a trouble on the land, you know it's coming down. Easy on, easy on, easy on the breeze, they say. see true love holds a flame. Wait on down by the sea. I was thinking about just the shift, you know, of for Ivor of going from, you know, full band down to just herself, and seemed like put a lot of effort in, you know. She always does, but now with the shifting tides, personal connection with your audience becomes more and more important, right? All the fake bullshit's out the door. That's how I feel. Anybody like that, I don't care. All right. A lot of your mainstream artists, I don't give a shit about any of their streams. Folk music, that's where I'm at. Sure as the summer rain is coming on. It's cold breeze, yeah, blowing over the seven seas. Tonight, Captain, I, Captain, I, from the crow's nest. Thinking about doing some reading or something. Keep a real mellow vibe today, you know what I'm saying? I feel that is so important, and as I've said before, I really also feel that everything in my life that happened up to this point kind of prepared me for current situation. So I hope that I see more people coming online making positive videos. That helps me a lot on an emotional level. You know, that's why I do it too, because I know that it's helpful to be able to connect with people. You know what I mean? And especially now with all the separation that's happened and fear and whatever, Personal connection with your audience is becoming more and more important, you know. Say, such as if you are selling your books or your whatever you're doing. And that's why I said, like, what is the value? To me, the value is hardcore folkishness. What else is worth the investment, right? Who gives a shit about pop music? I don't. I would rather listen to a smaller artist to a point rather than a big one because they're overproduced, right? And generally speaking, I don't feel their music. It's just empty, right? So, I was thinking about continuing on Champions of the She, because I have not finished that, right? I started it, but I didn't finish it, so. Let's see, where should I start in here? Because I hadn't finished this last chapter. Okay. Okay. Maybe we'll start here on page 74, leading off from the last chapter. The riders had drawn up on either side of him, just before the main entrance. Doors of heavy wicker work, closing a wide cut in the wall. There was no one visible about the dune or on the ramparts. A small cattle herd was browsing in the valley below, but there were no herdsmen. It wasn't an unusual situation to Lou. The riders had often frightened the weak and naturally suspicious villagers into hiding. He had been forced to coax them out several times. He did as he had done then. He rode up to the gateway and stopped at the edge of the shallow defensive trench, circled the wall. "Hello," he called to the fort. "I am from Tara. My name is Lulam Fada, a warrior to Nuada, High King of the Tuatha De Danann." That usually was enough to bring them forth. But here, there was no response. Move this just a little bit. No curious heads popped above the wall to look. No answering calls were lifted from inside. He tried again. "Bress has been deposed. The De Dananns are joining in a rising against Pomor. I've come to ask you to join in it." Still, there was no answer. No signs of life at all from the ring of stone. A vague worry began to rise in Lou. Usually that last bit was enough to draw the most reluctant out. What was wrong here? He turned and trotted back to the riders to issue a brief order. "I'm going to the gates. Stand here and wait." There was no need to tell them to keep watch or be prepared. Boy Scout motto. Those things they always did. Lou turned back and rode boldly up toward the gate. He knew that if the villagers were truly frightened and huddling inside, he might be inviting a thrown spear with this move. But there was no spear, no challenge, no sound from inside. He stopped at the doors and shouted through the wickerwork, "Hello inside! What's wrong with you? Why don't you answer me?" When there was still no answer, he tried the gates very gingerly at first, put a hand against one of the sections and pushed just a little. The door was swung easily on its wooden posts. opening half an arm's length. It was not locked. He tried to peek through the narrow crack, but he could see only the corner of two houses and the beaten earth of one side of the yard. No people were visible. His puzzlement increased. He dismounted and drew out the answerer, some instinct telling him to take no chances here. These villagers might believe him to be a lying enemy. A trap might await inside. So with the gleaming blade ready in one hand, he pushed the door fully open and walked through. Beyond the gateway was a large yard. Beyond it, in a rough semicircle, were the dwellings. Nowhere was there any sign of life. Lou stood for a time, looking searchingly, warily, round the fort's interior. He saw no movements, heard no tiny sounds. If someone was hiding there, they were very good at it. The fort seemed totally deserted, but he would go no further without support. Turned back to the doors and called to the waiting riders. "Come inside! Spread out and circle the yard." Immediately, they obeyed. Gliding forward through the gates, parting inside and turning in two directions, one column circling left, the other right. They moved round the inside of the circling wall, one by one, dropping off and taking positions at neat intervals, until they were spaced round the entire yard. When they had halted, Lou stepped forward into the center, examining the dwellings more critically. Most were homes of familiar circular type, with thatched roofs rising up into sharp cones. But like most of those he'd seen in these barren western lands, the lower walls were of neatly piled stones, not wicker and plaster. There were two sheds as well, square structures with flat roofs, meant for storage of livestock, tools, or food. One of the structures, squatting in the center of the others, was much larger. Its circle was stretched into an oval. It had to be the main hall. He moved across the yard to it, looking about, constantly seeking any sign of the 50 or more people who would inhabit a place this size. He stopped at the doorway to the hall and peered into its shadows. It seemed empty. Stepped cautiously within and stood, guard up, waiting for his eyes to adjust. The interior was one oval room. The earthen floor was scattered with fresh rush. He judged by the strong scent of it in the air. The central fire pit was circled with low tables for eating. Here, his wandering gaze fixed, and curiosity pulled him forward. For the tables were set with plates and food. He looked at the food more closely. There were bits of bread and cheese, some scraps of meat, some fish, some vegetables. The bread was stale, but showed no signs of mold. It had been sitting there less than a day. He moved round the tables past the central fire pit. He paused there and squatted down beside it. Heat was rising from the ash piles. He lifted an iron spit to stir them. Beneath the gray, he found the glowing red of several coals. He dug further and uncovered several of the rugged chunks of black peat still unburned. The fire had been newly laid the night before, he judged. He walked back to the doorway and paused there, looking round the compound once again. The total silence was a bit unnerving, kind of like now. In the sunny, still fall afternoon, it was as if the world were holding its breath, as if time had stopped here. He stepped forward and hit something with his foot. He looked down to find a rag doll, worn from some child's constant love, its crude wooden head smiling up at him with a faded mouth of paint. He reached down for it, then stood to gaze round at the high ridges of the hills, puzzlement creasing his young face. Where had they gone? What could have made them abandon this place so abruptly? Leaving belongings, leaving food on their plates, not stopping even to retrieve a fallen toy. Couldn't have been some more raid. There would have been signs of the fight. The Fomor would have left this place a slaughterhouse, bodies unburied, houses ripped apart. Had some magic been used on them, some trick, some enchantment, or were they still here somewhere hiding? He wheeled about in the circle, running his gaze over the whole compound again. Someone was here, he knew it. He could feel eyes upon him. "If you're hiding, please come out," he shouted. "I'm a friend." That gained him nothing. He shook his head. The eeriness of the place was bewildering. He had an impulse to leave. His intuition. He had no time for such delays in any case. But his stubbornness and youthful curiosity kept him there. He had to know what was happening. Then he remembered the souterrain. Okay, wait a minute. Souterrain. Most of the ring forts had them. That hidden underground room where things could be stored, where inhabitants could hide from enemies, and a tunnel that led out beyond the walls to some sheltered spot to allow an escape. There had to be one here. The main hall was the likeliest place to look. He went back into it. He set the doll down carefully on the table, where its wide, painted eyes watched him scrape at the floor rushes with his feet. He was seeking the cupboard entrance, and he found it quickly. He lifted an earth-covered square of slate to expose a hole in a crude ladder leading down to darkness. Lighting a small torch from the fire's embers, he started down, very slowly, still wary of some trap. At the bottom of the ladder, he stopped, holding the torch up ahead of him. Its reflected glow ran unevenly away along walls and ceiling, lined with gray-black slate. The flat slabs formed a neat, square tunnel high enough so he could stand nearly erect. The air was cool and damp, and the stone glistened with moisture. There was a strong scent of moist earth and another odor, too. One that he couldn't identify but found familiar and unpleasantly so. It aroused a sharp fear in him for the first time, and he found himself suddenly reluctant to force himself ahead. But he did move ahead, moving slowly along the tunnel, peering ahead into the gloom that the torch's light did little to dispel. The passage ran straight along for some way, then it abruptly forked. A second passage turned off at a sharp angle from the first. He paused at the corner and then eased cautiously round it to look down. the side passage. It was short and seemed to open into some larger space, some blackness that swallowed the faint rays of his light. He moved toward it, fighting to control the breathing that increased along with his rising sense of dread. He came into the opening to the room and lifted the torch high. It nearly dropped from his hand as he recoiled. He had found the inhabitants of the ring fort. Ooh. Here we go. Whoa. They were piled neatly, row upon row of them. Men, women, children. Whoa. All stacked together like cut wood. Many stared up blankly at the roof, their eyes gleaming with false life in the wavering torchlight. He understood what that other odor was now. It was blood. They were awash with it. Flooded the floor in a great pool that had only begun to dry around the edges at Lou's feet. It seemed to his horrified gaze that all had their throats neatly slit. Wow. Like animals slaughtered in some ritual. They showed no signs of struggle, and few looked afraid. Their frozen expressions were mostly of surprise. He turned away, sickened by the sight. It wasn't only the dead or the wounds or the blood. He had seen those in abundance before. It was the methodical way these poor people had been butchered and piled there, killed without any chance, without even knowing why. And then the why of it suddenly hit him like a physical blow. That was no more raid. They had been killed to get them out of the way quickly, to make the village seem deserted. And there was only one reason to do that, to draw him inside. He ran for the ladder, driven by a single urgent need. He had to get to the riders, get out of that ring fort. He scrambled up the ladder, threw down the torch, and rushed to the doorway. As he reached it, he could see the yard and some of the waiting horsemen. He raised his voice and shouted to them, "Riders! Riders!" He stepped into the yard as they started toward him. But as he did, the earth shuddered. Whoa. Earthquake, remember? And all before him seemed to rise up in the searing column of flame as a massive explosion racked the interior of the tiny fort. Okay, so that's the end of that. Next chapter, chapter 10. Into the Bodhran. Burren. Okay, let's name the chapter. Lou was knocked backward by the force of the blast. He fell heavily to the floor of the hall and lay stunned. When he finally staggered to his feet, he found that everything beyond the doorway was trapped in a ring of rising flames. Within the circle of the stone wall, it formed a solid screen, blocking all view of the country beyond. Arching up above it, a dome that obscured the sky, where the riders of the She had stood. There was no sign of anything but fire. Lou assumed they had been caught by the full force of the blast, enveloped by the flames. The power of it had apparently swept the beings away. Whether it had destroyed them or not, he had no way of knowing. But he couldn't believe that even they could have survived this. The intense heat was nearly unbearable. His skin felt tightly stretched across his face. His body and clothes were scorched from the first explosion. And he realized that only the stout rock walls of the hall had kept him from being killed. Several of the structures had survived, he saw, but their end was fast creeping upon them. Their thatched roofs were all ablaze. forming cones of fire that sent tight spirals of flame and smoke up to join the thick column rising above the fort. He looked at the roof of his own shelter. It was clearly a fire, too. The inside surface streaming with smoke and raining, burning splinters upon the room's interior. He knew that he couldn't last long there. Already the smoke was starting to choke him, crawling deeper into his lungs at every cough. He dropped down to the floor where some fresh air was left, but it was suddenly being sucked away by the inferno surrounding him. He had nowhere to go, nothing to do. The fire burned with no sign of abating, fueled by someone or something he couldn't understand or act against. Couldn't break through the wall of it. He was a captive of its circle. And now the flames above began to swirl. The rising heat had created a whirlpool in the currents of air. It began to spin faster and faster, pulling up the fire, drawing in more air and making it burn all the hotter, raising the temperature in its heart, in its trapped little huddle of doomed huts, to a height which nothing could survive. It would not be much longer, Lou knew. The roof above was ready to collapse upon him. His bare arms and legs and face were singed in a score of spots. His cloak smoldered. He threw a wild, despairing glance round the room, and his gaze was met by the wide, painted eyes of a forlorn, drooping figure, already smoking itself, but still smiling at him courageously. The little doll, soon, thought Lou, it and he would join its owner. And he found himself already envying her quick death over the one he was about to experience. But that fatalistic thought took his smoke-numbed mind to another. Saw the bodies in the souterrain, and he saw that other passage. That passage might take him out of the stricken fort. I'm going to take a break right there. I'm on page 80. Just kind of feeling that way today, you know what I mean? Just taking it easy. Oh, man. I go to the grocery store later. So my mom can't shop, so I have to go in and shop. She's over 65, as I said, and if you're over 65, the guidelines are, you know, that to get somebody else to go do, that's younger, to go do shopping for you, because they consider you to be at risk, right? I feel it is paramount and extremely important to keep some sense of connection as long as we can. You know, never know. There could be a situation where internet gets knocked out. I don't know. But if that happens, what would be your backup? Would be like a CB radio type thing, right? You're like, really? Yeah. And it would become that way. We're like, have you been prepping for this your whole life? Sometimes it feels that way. See how I did. I'll fine tune this, come back and use it. Since I jacked the Seagull, I gotta fix it. Part of me is celebrating that these big ass pop artists are getting kicked in their ass and realizing they're not that goddamn important. Because their egos are so big, you know what I mean? And they're like all of a sudden figuring out no one gives a shit. You're like, you feel that strongly? Yeah, I do, actually. Tired of pop culture. It's empty bullshit. Look at my sexy dance. I don't care. Whatever. It's become that way. You know what I'm saying? Like, how much of it is about talent versus looks? I'd rather listen to Potbelly Pete, who's got some heart, than Slick Talk, whoever gives a shit. So I've seen some big mamas too that can sing. Whoa, wait. They can sing. S-A-N-G. Oh, yeah. It's easy on the way. Yeah. Throw all the fake shit in the file. We didn't need it anyway. See the smoke on the water, yeah. Fire in the sky, yeah. Part of me is laughing too, because I'm like, well, shit, I guess I was prepared for all this shit. That's what do I say? It's true. Just sitting here in the bunker B, waiting for the zombie apocalypse. Can't help it. That's how it feels. Like, we're just building up to it, This is the end of the world. It feels, but I'm gonna keep it chill. Yeah. Wow. Epic on the wave. Chill pill, you know what I mean? Go and ease my way in. But like, I was noticing, I was listening to Ivor, and I was watching her, and she can tune by ear, no problem. Or you see a lot of, I see a lot of newer people that play guitar or whatever, and they can't even string their guitar. You're like, whoa. You're like, wow. And then if you never spent time developing an ear for sound, then you are dependent on a tuner. I don't know. I don't really like using electronic tuners. So I just go by intuition on tuning. And then I like to sit there and spend my time, and then once I get it to that perfect state. But no matter what, when you go to play, the strings are going to stretch a little bit. So it'll slightly go out a little bit as you play. That was pretty special, though. I really enjoyed that. That was awesome. I hope we're going to see more of these folk artists. Maybe it's the rise of the folk artists online, you know what I mean? Because now personal connection matters versus just get up on stage in front of a gigantic audience and it's a given because you're a big artist and blah, blah, blah. So there's a lack of personal connection, right? Like the whole Eurovision competition being canceled. Right? Now it's, like I said, it's online. We'll see. Maybe that will become a bigger trend, versus huge venues and all that other stuff. I like live concerts too and whatever, but I just thought it was cool because I grew up in the coffee house culture. Generally speaking, you're playing for your friends, the regulars that would come in the coffee shop or whatever, and you weren't that separated from the crowd. You were, personally available to them to talk to them versus, I'm special and I walk with my head down and I don't talk to anybody, right? Because there's too many damn people. Versus a smaller venue where it behooves you to have a stronger connection to your crowd. And I really feel that is becoming more and more important. It's important to me, for sure, and to feel personally connected. Doesn't mean you're hanging out in the person's house, but in a way you kind of are, you know what I'm saying? Like Ivor was recording from her home. That's way more personal than just, wherever. But she's more of a personal connection artist anyway, right? And those smaller artists are probably better off than the big time artists because they are not used to having to have a personal connection with their crowd. I mean, you look at it like, okay, these late night guys, for instance, they're not talking to their crowd. No, they're sitting back with writers, right? And they just go home at the end of the night. There is zero personal connection with their crowd. Nothing. That's how I feel. So they're an empty vessel. That's how I look at it. Or rather, as Bobcat says with no filter, limp dick don't do shit. That's what I think. I'm not going to say their names. That's my opinion. I don't think they're shit. I think they suck. I don't think they're funny. I think their jokes suck. They're cheesy. No heart. Fake bullshit. Like I said, an Irishman doing a 60-second tribute for some stupid ass comedy song for St. Patrick's Day. You get no heart. Nothing is authentic, right? It's not coming from a true-hearted place. It's coming from the money game. Who gives a shit? Empty bullshit. But now, what will happen is, I feel, is you're going to have underground music gatherings, underground concerts, right? Just like Prohibition era. Okay. Well, I have the Mandola sitting back here. Hadn't busted that out yet. Brought that out. And we've got the drum, of course. Let's see. Ooh, what shall I do? But I'm going to be paying attention to these folk artists as they come out, like Ivor. I really like her. She's rad. Here we go. Nice. Oh, yeah. All right, I'm warming up. Oh, yes, close up and personal, baby. So, Rise of the Folk. Rise of the Folk artist. That's right. So, I would say if you're a smaller channel, whatever, this is the time to tune in. We need you. You know what I'm saying? Don't think that people are going to pull back. If you're just sitting at your house, what else do you have to do but study and read and watch whatever shit online? To me, that's way more exciting than some pre-recorded television show, to be honest. Live is exciting in the moment. Improvisation. All right. We'll see what happens. Maybe someone will show up. And those of us who are wise to the oak will circle round, baby. Oh, yeah. Okay. Almost there. Is it a write-up or a firing yet? Well, it might be. It's a firing for me. See, look at that. It looks cool, huh? I like this. Is how I low-tech. I low-cost it. Low-tech, you know. What I need to do is get some, like, strip lighting or something. You're like, this is the studio. I know. It's what I have. They're like, you record outside. I know. It's what it is. It's unusual, but you notice most of these people are going to record in their house. They don't record outside like I do. Maybe Ivor will. You never know. Like hook up something in her backyard. Okay, let's try this slide. Yeah, right. Let's try to drop this. Adjust. Kind of like my foot on the desk. You're like, how hardcore are you, Bobcat? Well, been prepped my whole life, and now I'm in the bunker. Yeah. Be easy on the breeze, baby, come on. Wow. Folk gather on the stage. I'm gonna sit down. Now that I've captained, I call that captaining. Like when you like put your goddamn boot up on some shit. You're like, I know. All right, put my boot right here. I know. Doing it. This is the legging, you know. Oh, this sound. Can feel it on the wave, but easy on. Feel tight, right? Yeah. Be waiting down there for you. For be a smoke rising on the mountain. Yeah. And it's easy on the breeze. Oh, feel it way deep down now. Yeah. I shall return. Thank you. All right. I'll be back. Promise. Take care.